Hi, it's Dawn from Ninja Bunny Crochet. Today I have for us to do the herringbone double crochet. I really like this stitch. It's really super easy to do and it looks really cool. I love the way it slants one way and then it slants the other way. I just think it has this really cool texture. And the best thing about this stitch is it's reversible. It looks the same on the front as it does on the back, which makes it a great stitch to use for blankets. You could also use it for a washcloth. I think this would make a nice stitch for a scarf. Anything that you would want to see both sides of your work, this stitch would be a great stitch for. It's really easy to do. It only has a 1-row repeat, so there's really not a lot of muscle memory or anything that you would need to have to do this stitch. You could do this while you're watching TV. It doesn't really, once you get into the groove, there's not a lot to it. So let's grab our hooks, grab our yarn, and let's get into making the herringbone double crochet stitch. The herringbone double crochet stitch, you can use any multiple of chains plus 2. So for today's tutorial, we're going to use a chain of 20. You're going to start off like you would for a regular double crochet, but it's going to be a little bit different. So we're going to start off, you're going to yarn over and go into that third chain from hook like you would with a normal double crochet. So 1, 2, 3, insert your hook and pull up a loop. Stop right there. This is where it's going to be different than a regular double crochet. We're going to take that loop that we just pulled through, and we're going to bring it through the next loop. Stop right there, yarn over, pull through the next loop, yarn over, and pull through the last 2 loops on your hook. And that is your first herringbone double crochet. So we're going to repeat that all the way down the chain. So yarn over again, insert into the next chain, pull up a loop, pull through the first loop, yarn over, pull through the next loop, yarn over, and go through the last 2. Let's do that again. Yarn over, insert into the chain, next stitch, pull up a loop, go through the first loop, yarn over, go through the next loop, yarn over, pull through the last 2. One more time, yarn over, insert into the chain, pull up a loop, pull through that first loop, yarn over, pull through the next loop, yarn over, pull through the last 2. Now you're going to notice that your stitches are leaning towards the way you're crocheting. That is normal. That's what it's supposed to do. So continue working this stitch. At first you're going to go a little bit slow until you get into the groove, because you're naturally going to want to yarn over and do a regular double crochet. But once you start working this stitch, you're going to get into the groove and you're going to start working the stitch, and you'll start picking up speed. So continue down the chain and I'll meet up with you at the end of the chain. I'm at the end of the chain. I have 1 stitch left, and we're going to place our last herringbone double crochet in that. This last stitch can be a little bit fiddly. To start row 2, we're going to chain up 2, and in this stitch the chain 2 does count as a stitch. I find when that happens, sometimes I have a little bit of trouble trying to find that chain 2, so I like to place a stitch marker in that right there. That way I can find it when I come back around. So since this counts as a stitch, we're going to skip this one. Let me get this out of the way here. We're going to skip this stitch right here, and we're going to start into this one. And we're just going to repeat what we were doing in row 1 in row 2. So yarn over the hook, insert, pull through that first loop, yarn over, pull through the second loop, yarn over, pull through both loops. And you'll notice that our first row was leaning this way now, and our second row is leaning this way. And that's what gives that herringbone look. It'll become a little more evident when you get a few more rows on. So continue working the herringbone double crochet till you get to the end of the row, and I'll meet up with you at the end of the row. I'm at the end of row 2. Don't forget to do your last stitch in the top of the chain 2. Chain up 2. If you need to, place your stitch marker in that turning chain. Turn the work. Don't forget to skip that first stitch since your chain 2 counts as a stitch. And start your first herringbone double crochet. And continue working the herringbone double crochet in each stitch down the row. And as you'll see, it's starting to have that back and forth look like it did in the example. It's starting to have that back and forth look. So continue down the row, and I'll show you what we do with the stitch marker when we get down to the end of the row. I'm at the end of row 3, and here's the stitch marker that's marking that chain, the top of that chain 2, and we can take that out, and then we can place our last herringbone double crochet. We're going to yarn over first in the top of that chain 2. Now if you don't need to place the stitch marker there, that's perfectly fine too. I do it because I am in the habit of not using my chain 2 or my turning chains as a stitch. So when I come across a pattern or a stitch that requires the turning chain to be a stitch, I like to place that stitch marker there so that I can find it, because I'm in the habit of not looking for the turning chain to be a stitch. So it's just a little tip that I have learned over the years, because I'm not in that habit. So if you are like me and you're not in the habit of looking for that turning chain to be a stitch, then you might want to use the stitch marker. Or if you're new to crochet and you're not sure where that stitch is, then you can go ahead and use that stitch marker to give you a clue of where you need to put your hook in for that last stitch. So if you've liked this tutorial, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't done so already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and ring that bell so you won't miss any of my tutorials. Thanks for watching, and happy crocheting! Bye-bye!